everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Luciditi. So I was asked previously to talk a little bit about my experiences with anxiety when I was living in Japan, and I think the actual question was, how did you cope with anxiety while living in Japan? And the truth is, I didn't. But I did end up living abroad in Amsterdam a few years later, and by then I had learned so much from my experience living in Japan a few years prior that I was so much more successful, and it helped really build my confidence. So what I wanted to do today is to give advice for how to cope with anxiety, not just living in Japan, but living abroad as a whole. The first bit of advice is going to be specific to people wanting to study abroad in Japan, then people wanting to work abroad in Japan, and then I'm going to give a bit of advice in general for all people who want to live or travel abroad on their own. So my first pieces of advice are for students that want to study abroad in Japan. So my first piece of advice is 1, choose a homestay family. Bear with me, I know it sounds a little scary, but the truth is that the most important thing for someone who has anxiety living abroad is to have a strong support system. If you don't have any friends going with you before leaving, living in the dorms is actually going to be pretty hard. When I first studied abroad in Japan, I chose to live in the dorms because my mother was scared of having me live with other people that she didn't know. This turned out to be the worst decision that I could have possibly made. And yes, I have heard stories about bad homestay families, but most of those people were able to move out and get a different family to live with. Having a local person to the area that is there to help you when you're sick, when you need something, when you want advice for how to travel is so valuable while you're living in Japan. And it also gives you more exposure to practicing the language, to learning more about the culture, and just overall acclimating to your period abroad. Because I have to tell you, if you have anxiety, you're going to need to reach out to people, and reaching out to people is really hard. If you build a relationship with your homestay mom or your homestay brother or sister, or somebody that you can get to know in that family who's expecting to be that support system for you, it's going to be a lot easier, because I needed support and I wasn't getting that from my family at home. So I tried to reach out to the staff at the university, and they're inundated with so much work, and they're so busy, and they're caring for so many other people that they're not always going to be able to help you in the way that you need to be helped. Number 2, and I can't stress this enough, is choose a small school or a small program. When I went, I chose to go to Osaka because I wanted to be in the Kansai area. I did not choose the school based on the size of the program and what they had available there. That was another big mistake that I made. I ended up going to a school that had a population of 700 international students per semester. Because of this, I felt lost in a sea of other foreigners. It was so hard to make friends with people on campus that were not international because there were so many people for them to choose from to meet in everyday circumstances. It's a lot harder to even make friends within your group of people because with 700 people, most of them click off in the first couple of days. They started organizing by what country or what language that they spoke, and it didn't push people outside of their comfort zone because they always had somebody else from a country that they came from to connect with. When you go to a smaller school, you actually are forced to be in a smaller group, and that group rallies together through that experience. My friend went to a smaller school when he studied abroad in Liverpool, and he was in a cohort of maybe 15 people. And all of those people came together and grew close, and they were all from different backgrounds, and it forced them to get to know each other and get to know their different perspectives, and they're still friends to this day. 3, and this is very specific to Japan, but don't go in the spring semester. And I feel like this probably works for all programs because when you go in the fall, everybody is starting a new year, everybody's starting together. And when you go in the spring, there are some people that were already there for a couple of months and they've already built their social support systems, and it's very hard to move into things that are already established. The problem with Japan in particular is that the spring semester actually doesn't start for Japanese students until somewhere in March, April. And because the school that I was going to was starting on an American system, we started in January. So there were no Japanese students on campus for the first 2 to 3 months that I was there. And I was only there for 5 or 6 months. This made it so difficult for me to meet local people. I was basically in a program with other foreigners, and it didn't feel like I was in Japan. Another thing is that the easiest way to make friends in Japan is to make friends by joining a club, but because there was no Japanese students on campus, there were no clubs for me to join. So I didn't have ways for me to jump in and try to meet new people and try to become part of a social group because those opportunities weren't available at the time. So bouncing off of that, Number 3 is to join a club. I wish I would have had that opportunity to do that, but another important thing to consider is when you're looking for what school you want to go to, look at what clubs they do have before even going there and when they start and whether or not they're active, because if you can find something that you're really, really interested in and not just something that you think you might be interested in, you're going to really have an easier time meeting people and connecting with people within that club. For me, when I was very anxious, it was hard for me to join a club because they already knew each other and I had to go out of my comfort zone and talk to them, and that was very difficult for me. But I do realize now, a couple years later, having been through this more than once, is that if it's something that's very specific that I'm very, very into, I have a lot better time having a conversation about it. And part of that is I really, really hate small talk. I'm not good at it. I don't know what to say to people I don't know, and it's just very, very anxiety ridden to have to make small talk with people. So if you find something that you already connect with, it's going to be a lot easier. Okay, so the next bits of advice are for people that want to work as an English teacher living in Japan. So number 1, and I know this might not seem obvious, is work at a job that has coworkers. I worked for a company called Peppy Kids Club. This company basically had you going to a different school each week, different students each day, and no coworkers. I had to open the school, close the school. Every single person I was seeing in a given day, I wasn't able to build a relationship with because I saw my students once a month and I only saw my coworkers in the region once or twice a month as well during meetings. If you're a person that's very anxious and you have difficulty making friends and pushing your comfort zone, being in an environment every day that doesn't give you the opportunity to make friends naturally is going to be very difficult. And I have to say, the experience I had of isolation was far worse than anything else that I had experienced when I was living in Japan. And a huge part of that is because I chose the wrong program to go to. But what that experience taught me is another mistake that I made, and that is number 2, is work an ALT job, not as an Eikaiwa teacher. And there's nothing wrong with being an Eikaiwa teacher. Being an Eikaiwa teacher is also very fulfilling and it's a lot of fun. But if you have anxiety and you have trouble meeting people and have trouble with new environments, if you're working Eikaiwa, you're basically leading the class on your own. You're responsible for your own lessons plans. You are already going to be so stressed adjusting to a new environment that having all of that responsibility in and of itself is going to just provide more stress to you. If you work an ALT job, ALT jobs are basically assistant language teachers. There is a teacher leading the classroom and you're assisting them. They'll tell you what to do, they'll be supportive for you, and you walk around the classrooms and you help the students, and it's so much more fulfilling and more fun. Even though I didn't get the opportunity to do that, I did know a lot of people who did, and they always told me that they had a good time with that experience. So the next bit of advice is for everybody going to Japan and people that are studying abroad or living abroad more generally. Number 1 is don't engage too much with the world that you left behind. I know for me, one of the biggest mistakes I made is I spent so much time on the internet, chatting with people from home, chatting with people I used to chat with before I even came to Japan, and because of that, I was using it as a crutch to not go outside and meet new people and explore new places and try to make the world around me my home. I know the process of acclimating to a new environment is difficult, especially if you have anxiety. And it's very easy to want to lean on the things that you're comfortable with, but if you lean too much into them, it's going to just affect you negatively. And that's where advice number 2 comes in. Know your coping mechanisms, but don't overuse them. It's important for you to know what your trigger points are for your anxiety and when you're going to feel overwhelmed. If you know a situation is too overwhelming, it's okay to stop, take a step back, tell yourself you're going to need a moment to yourself, and go back to it later. Or if you got to end the day or the activity you're doing, go home. It's okay. Celebrate the fact that you already pushed yourself to go out there in the first place, and just accept that that's all you have for today. Try to find your internal resources, whatever it is for you that helps you overcome your anxiety, whether or not that's writing, whether or not that's video games, reading, taking a nice walk outside. Do whatever you need to do to gain your energy back, but after that, go back outside and try again. Don't rely too much on your coping mechanisms because it's going to just lead to you isolating yourself, staying at home, and not engaging with the outside world. I can't stress enough how engage with the world around you is such an important thing to do. So number 4, be okay with being alone sometimes. The thing is if you're the type of person that needs to have somebody else to go out and do anything or explore the world, you're going to have a tough time when you're studying abroad. When you're studying abroad or when you're working abroad, You want to go and engage with the world around you as much as possible. And that means being okay with having to do that on your own. Becoming independent, learning how to read maps, learning how to get somewhere and get back. All of those things are really good skills that are going to help you in the long run, regardless of whether or not you're abroad or at home. The other thing is, if you go out and you build that confidence in yourself and you build that sense of independence, you're going to be able to meet people and make friends without even trying. So don't go with the intention of trying to make more connections, but do know that you're going to still gain a lot of skills that are going to help you build connections in the future. Number 5 is be okay with failure. Not everything that you do or try is going to work out, and that is okay. You're going to probably find a club that you want to join and hope that that works out, and maybe you go to the club, maybe it's awkward, maybe you don't meet people there, maybe you go home feeling like, I don't want to do that again. And that's okay. It's very normal to go try and push yourself to do something and then feel kind of underwhelmed with how that experience panned out, especially knowing that you put so much energy going there in the first place. But the thing is when something doesn't work out, you just go and try something else, and you keep going and you keep trying, and even if they all fail in a row, at some point you're going to reach something that's going to work. And even if you don't beat yourself up about it. It is okay. Some things are harder for others, and it's a learning experience. And when you get older and when you try things that don't work out, you get more good at figuring out what things do, which goes into number 6, and that is to not compare yourself to others. You're going to go study abroad, and so are all the extroverts of the world, and they're going to be so much more successful from your perspective. You're going to look at them and they're going to be making so many friends, fitting into clubs, and just look like they're thriving. And maybe you don't feel like that's what you're doing on the inside. But you don't know them, you don't know what their experiences are, you don't know their life, you don't know if they're struggling with other stuff, and you can't look at them and measure your success based off of them. Your successes are going to be maybe a little bit smaller than other people's. Maybe getting out of bed and going to a place by yourself is a success for you, because that's something that's a lot harder for you to do. Which brings us to number 7, relish in all of the little successes that you made. Celebrate each and every little thing that you do that is good. Don't focus on all the failures that you're perceiving. Just focus on all of the things that you're doing that is bringing you a step closer. Maybe you're scared of going to places alone, but you traveled to a new city by yourself. Maybe you're scared of joining clubs, but you went to a club. Even though you didn't make any new friends, you did it. That's a lot. It might be hard when you're there and you see so many other people doing the same thing as you, but just remember, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people every day that want to study abroad, want to live abroad, but are too scared and don't do it. I meet people in my family all the time that go, I don't know how you do it. I couldn't be by myself. I couldn't go and do something like that. There are a million other people that want to do something that you're doing and don't have enough bravery to do it in the first place. What you're doing is incredibly brave, even if it doesn't feel like it to yourself. And the last one is number 8, be open. And this is another mistake that I really made. I was so scared of being judged for all of the struggles that I was going through that I didn't take the time to reach out to people that I was close to and let them know that I was having a hard time. I wanted to have this brave face that made it look like I was doing good and I was thriving, and in the end, I just ended up crumbling more than I should have. The thing is if you're lucky enough to go with a partner or a friend to study abroad with, you have something that a lot of people don't. And don't be afraid to tell them, hey, I'm having a hard time. I really want you to support me through this and help me get through it. If you make friends or meet people, don't be afraid to tell them, hey, I struggle with anxiety. This is something that's really hard for me. I just want you to be understanding with that. And you might not get the response that you want from people, but it's still good to be open and honest with yourself rather than hold it inside and not let anybody know. Don't lean on people too much though. You don't want to be an emotional drain on that person, but do know that it's okay to admit, I'm having a hard time. It's part of culture shock. It's a part of growth. It's a part of living and studying abroad for a lot of people that do it. So that's all the advice I have today. I know it's a little bit of a long video, but if you have anxiety and you're scared of traveling abroad, just know that you definitely can do it. You just need to know that it's going to be a little bit harder for you than for everybody else. But in the end, without a doubt, I can say that it's worth it. Because for me, it was worth it. Because of the growth that I've had from living and studying and being on my own, especially after coming from a pretty sheltering family, is something that I would never give back. And with that, don't forget to please leave a comment. I'm answering all my comments. Please press the like button so that I know you liked the video. And please don't forget to subscribe. I will be uploading videos every week. Every 3 weeks, I'll be making a history video, so please look forward to that. And thank you. See you next week. Same time, same place. Bye.